A black mechanic helps a white woman fix her broken vehicle. When she sees the pocket watch on his belt, she is immediately shocked. No one saw him. No one even remembered his name. But on that scorching afternoon, as the sun mercilessly beat down on the desolate highway, he became the only lifeline for a woman who seemed to have everything. A luxury electric SUV, sleek and silent, stopped on a forgotten stretch of the Great Divide Highway, its advanced system displaying an ominous error. A powerful executive accustomed to having the world at her feet, now vulnerable and lost, not even knowing how to access her vehicle's manual. Cassandra Cassie Sterling punched the polished touchscreen of her Apex Aurora in frustration as she checked her diamond-studded watch. 11:43 a.m. In exactly 17 minutes, she was supposed to be presenting the project that would define the future of her family's tech conglomerate to the most important investors in the country. Sweat was already dampening her silk blouse as she popped the hood, only to be greeted by a complex array of sealed power couplings and fiber optics, completely alien to her. "Damn it," she muttered, loosening her designer scarf. Her $5,000 tailored suit was not designed for roadside diagnostics, and her knowledge of electric vehicle systems was non-existent beyond operating the luxurious interior. The irony of the situation did not escape her. The woman who controlled a tech empire was completely helpless in front of wires and circuits she did not understand. The rumble of an aging diesel engine interrupted her despair. A pickup truck, worn down by countless journeys and sun-baked roads, stopped a few yards away. Cassie watched skeptically as a man stepped out of the vehicle. He wore grease-stained jeans, a faded work shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and his short curly hair was dark and healthy. His dark skin glistened in the harsh sun. "Need some help?" he asked, approaching with steady steps and a confidence that contrasted with Cassie's precarious situation. "I have a crucial meeting in 15 minutes, she replied, not hiding her irritation. "My assistant should be sending help, but there's no decent signal in this damn place." The man didn't seem impressed by her apparent status or bad mood. Without asking permission, he leaned over the silent, complex heart of the Apex Aurora as if ownership of a vehicle that cost more than a house meant nothing. "It's the primary power coupling, compounded by a software glitch," he diagnosed with impressive confidence. "I can reset it temporarily so you can make it to the city. It won't last long, but it'll give you a few hours." Cassie sized him up with a skeptical look, running her eyes over him in a not-so-subtle analysis. "Are you sure?" "I'm a certified EV technician," he replied dryly, holding her gaze without flinching. "I have a shop 10 miles from here, just off the old mining trail." Without waiting for approval, he returned to the truck to fetch his tools. His movements were precise and economical, without a single unnecessary gesture. He began working on the vehicle with absolute concentration, his hands strong and nimble, moving with surgical precision over the intricate components. "5 more minutes and you would have fried the entire drive system," he commented without looking up, adjusting something Cassie couldn't even identify. "These Apex models are powerful but surprisingly delicate, like some people." The indirect remark didn't go unnoticed, but Cassie was too concerned about her meeting to feel offended. "How do you know so much about luxury electric vehicles working in?" Cassie stopped abruptly, aware of the prejudice in her unfinished question. In a forgotten desert outpost, he finished, giving her a direct look over his shoulder. "I read, I study, I care about my work. Excellence is not exclusive to big cities, Miss Sterling." Cassie was surprised to hear her surname. "How do you know who I am?" "Your picture is often in the business section of the digital news." He replied simply, closing the hood. "There, that should get you into town." "I owe you one," Cassie said, relieved. She pulled several bills from her leather wallet. "Please accept this as my thanks." It was when she held out the money that Cassie saw it, an antique silver pocket watch, its casing intricately carved with a small compass rose, attached to his belt by a worn leather strap. It was surprisingly delicate for someone with such hard-working hands. A watch she knew perfectly well. The world seemed to freeze in that instant. A flash of memory crossed her mind. A small boy with bright, inquisitive eyes, a promise exchanged under a canopy of stars, the last gift her own mother had ever given her before she was gone. "Where did you get that watch?" she asked, her voice more shaky than she would have liked to admit. The question hung in the scorching midday air. The man instinctively closed his hand over the watch, partially protecting the heirloom. "It was my mother's," he replied casually, although his gaze became cautious. "Why do you ask?" What the mechanic couldn't imagine was that 20 years earlier, that same watch had been placed in her small child's hands by a girl who promised to come back for him. A girl who would become the woman standing in front of him. A woman who had broken a sacred promise and now found him again in the most unlikely way possible. If this story of forgotten promises and unexpected reunions touched your heart, be sure to sign up to find out how a simple watch will become the catalyst for a revolution in the lives of these two strangers whom fate insists on reconnecting. Isaiah hardened his eyes when he noticed Cassie's fixation on the watch. He put the money in his pocket and turned away, walking determinedly toward his truck. If the car breaks down, the repair shop is 10 miles away. First entrance after the painted canyon sign. Cassie hesitated, torn between the crucial meeting and that disturbing discovery, the watch. She began, but he had already started the engine. "Your meeting, Ms. Sterling," Isaiah reminded her coldly. "The investors are waiting." As the Apex Aurora disappeared down the road, Isaiah stood motionless. "She didn't recognize me," he murmured, stroking the watch with his thumb, an automatic gesture he had cultivated over 20 years. After all, she just didn't see me at Dixon Dynamics. Isaiah worked furiously on a dismantled EV battery pack, channeling his frustration into every movement. "You're going to overcharge that cell array," observed Solomon "Solly" Dixon, his uncle, approaching cautiously, tall and gray-haired at the temples. He was the only one who knew his complete story. "He showed up, Uncle Solly, with a broken-down vehicle, like some cruel twist of fate." Solly froze. Cassandra Sterling, the girl who promised to return, the woman who forgot Isaiah. Correcting, drying his hands on a rag, he looked at me and saw only an anonymous mechanic. She recognized the watch, but not the boy who had kept it for 2 decades. That night, Isaiah opened a wooden box stored under his bed. Inside, carefully organized, were digital news clippings tracing Cassandra Sterling's rise. Her face appeared in articles about innovation, corporate philanthropy, and her recent engagement to Gregory Finch, heir to a global logistics fortune. "Tomorrow, she won't even remember the watch," he murmured to the empty room. Isaiah was wrong. The next morning, an inconspicuous sedan pulled up outside the workshop. Cassie emerged, this time without her expensive suit, as if trying to go unnoticed. "We're open," Isaiah said, keeping his distance. "Actually, I came to return this," she replied, holding out her hand. In the center of her palm was a small, worn wooden telescope, its brass fittings dull with age. Isaiah's world stopped. "That telescope, your first carving, given to me as a farewell gift. Orion Ridge Orphanage, Stargazer section," he said softly. "You were the girl who showed me how to read the stars when all the other boys made fun of me. You promised you'd come back." Cassie said the words involuntarily. "I tried," Isaiah replied, something dark crossing his face. "For years, but my father, he had other plans." Solly emerged from the work area, wiping his hands on a cloth, his eyes sizing Cassie up with accumulated suspicion. "So, the young princess returns," he commented in a low voice. 20 years later, Cassie held his gaze. "I understand your mistrust, but I came to ask for a chance to explain." "Solly rescued me when I left the orphanage," Isaiah explained. "He taught me everything I know, gave me a home when no one else would. Something I promised to do." Cassie acknowledged with visible regret. "Why now?" Isaiah challenged. "After all this time?" Cassie took a deep breath. "In 3 weeks, I'll officially announce my engagement to a man I don't love, take over the presidency of a company I secretly detest, and complete my transformation into the woman my father always demanded I be." She paused significantly. "And then I saw you, or rather I saw the watch, and something stirred." Cassie's phone rang insistently. On the screen, Greg, 6th call. "He seems persistent." Isaiah observed bitterly. "My jailer," she replied, hanging up. "Our marriage is a corporate merger disguised as romance. And what do you expect from me?" Isaiah asked, crossing his arms. "Absolution for abandoning you? Answers," she said simply, "and maybe a chance to correct the biggest mistake of my life." What Cassie didn't reveal was the investigation she had begun the night before. A thorough search of Isaiah Dixon, his past in the orphanage. and the mysterious disappearance of documents related to the property that once belonged to his family. What Isaiah concealed was the file hidden in the back of his workshop. Yellowed papers with the Sterling Enterprises logo, signed by Cassie's father, detailed the fraudulent acquisition of the Dixon family's ancestral land, the same land where the new corporate complex, Project Horizon, that would be Cassie's legacy, now stood. This land was not just for water, but held the largest, purest reserve of rare earth minerals in the region, critical for the next generation of EV battery technology. As they stared at each other, neither realized that their destinies were intertwined by more than childhood memories. They were bound by a conspiracy that destroyed a family to build an empire on mineral wealth. In 3 weeks, when Cassie was supposed to seal her future, Isaiah would finally reveal the truth that could tear down everything the Sterling family had built on injustice and lies. 3 days had passed since the unexpected reunion. Cassie canceled meetings and delegated responsibilities, immersing herself obsessively in old files. Something didn't fit in her father's story about the land that was now part of the new Sterling business complex. At the family mansion, she was searching her father's private study when she found a locked folder labeled Dixon Estate Files, the same name as the land where Isaiah lived. Using the key she had secretly copied years ago, Cassie opened it and felt her blood run cold. Contracts, lawsuits, and one particularly disturbing document, a forged death certificate for Isaiah's mother, Eleanor Dixon. He faked her death, she muttered in disbelief, to get the land and the minerals. At the same time, in Solly's workshop, Isaiah was making his own decision. He had kept the truth for too long. "I'm going to confront him," he declared, revealing the hidden file to Solly. "The documents are authentic. His father's signature is on all of them." "It's dangerous," Solly warned. "The Sterlings destroyed your family once. They can do worse now." Isaiah caressed the compass. "Rose watch. I have nothing left to lose." That night, Cassie was driving her sedan toward the workshop when she received a message from Isaiah. "Old Stargazer's Point, 20 minutes. Come alone." The small, elevated plateau at Old Stargazer's Point was deserted when Cassie arrived. Isaiah was waiting, sitting on a rock under a cluster of ancient junipers, strangely similar to the one at the orphanage where they had first gazed at the stars. "For 20 years, I wondered why my mother abandoned me," Isaiah began without preamble. "Why, I lost everything in an instant." "Isaiah, I've discovered something terrible," Cassie interrupted, her eyes reflecting genuine horror. Your father faked my mother's death," he finished, handing her some yellowed papers. "Then he threatened her life if she tried to get me back, all so he could take our land, the land with the largest reserve of rare earth minerals in the region. Perfect for EV batteries." Cassie paled as she examined the documents. The signature was unmistakable, the same one she had seen minutes earlier on her own discovery. "How did you get these?" she asked, her voice trembling. "My mother left them with Solly before she disappeared. He waited until I was old enough to understand." Isaiah pulled out an old photograph. "This is my mother, Eleanor Dixon. She didn't abandon me. She was forced. Disappear." The photo showed a woman with a gentle face wearing the same compass, Rose watch. In the background stretched a verdant valley, now transformed into concrete and steel bearing the Sterling logo. "Tomorrow I'm going to make everything public," Isaiah announced, his voice firm. "At the groundbreaking ceremony for the new complex." Cassie stared at him, stunned. "There will be hundreds of reporters, investors, politicians." "Exactly," Isaiah confirmed. The perfect moment to reveal that the Sterling Empire was built on fraud, extortion, and destroyed lives. Cassie's phone rang insistently, her father for the 5th time in a row. She ignored the call. "There's more," Isaiah continued. "I have reason to believe my mother is still alive." This revelation hit Cassie like a bolt of lightning. "How?" "Her last communication came 8 years ago, an anonymous letter, but the handwriting was hers." Isaiah hesitated. "From a private wellness clinic in New Hope." Cassie took a deep breath, making a decision that would change everything. "Don't wait until tomorrow," she said, her eyes meeting his with new determination. "Let's go now." "Where to?" "The inauguration. My father moved the event up to tonight, fearing leaks about the project. No one knows except the inner circle." In the limousine on the way to the complex, Cassie explained her plan. I have full access to the security system and the stage. I can put you in position at the exact moment to confront him publicly. What Cassie didn't say was that she had also discovered the exact location of Isaiah's mother, not in a clinic but on a secluded, luxurious Sterling-owned estate held under care as collateral for Solly's silence, knowing he was Eleanor's former lawyer. The event was lavish. The business and political elite admired the imposing complex built on what had once been the Dixon family home. Victor Sterling, impeccable in his suit, smiled for the cameras, his authority unquestionable. "Cassie," he exclaimed when he saw his daughter. His eyes hardened when he noticed Isaiah beside her. "What is he doing here?" "A special guest, father," Cassie replied coldly. "Someone with a fascinating story about the origins of this land. Victor, my office now." In his luxurious office overlooking the devastated valley, the Sterling patriarch stared at Isaiah with contempt. "How much?" he asked dryly. "What's your price for disappearing like your mother should have done?" "My mother," Isaiah replied, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling in his chest. "I want to know where she is." Victor laughed, a humorless sound. "After all these years, she probably doesn't even remember you." "She's alive then," Cassie concluded, discreetly recording the conversation on her cell phone. "You've kept her prisoner for 20 years. Prisoner?" Victor dismissed the word with disdain. "I gave her a life of luxury in exchange for a piece of worthless land. It was a deal." "A deal made under threat is no deal," a new voice interjected. At the door stood Solly, accompanied by an older woman whose eyes, identical to Isaiah's, overflowed with decades of contained pain. "Mother," Isaiah whispered, his voice breaking. Eleanor Dixon advanced slowly, her eyes fixed on the son she hadn't seen since he was a child. "Isaiah," she said simply, her voice choked with emotion. Behind them, in the hallway, Gregory Finch watched the scene with clinical interest, his cell phone recording every word exchanged. "What have you done, Victor?" Greg asked, stepping into the room, his voice sharp. "This explains why I always felt there was something wrong with our corporate merger. My family lost everything to your business acquisitions, too." Victor turned pale at the sight of Greg, a man he had groomed for an alliance, now an unexpected betrayer. "Proper research before a business marriage, Victor." Greg replied coldly, holding up a file, "including your complete history of fraudulent adoptions and property seizures. You didn't just target the Dixons." The reunion between mother and son was about to expose not only the fraud behind the origins of the Sterling Empire, but also reveal how excessive ambition had destroyed lives and torn families apart. A truth that not even all the money in the world could hide anymore. And while Victor Sterling watched his empire of lies crumble before his eyes, an even more devastating truth remained hidden. Victor Sterling was not Cassie's biological father, but had orchestrated her adoption from a different orphanage after his wife had a miscarriage, manipulating records. He then proceeded to acquire both orphanages, ensuring both Cassie and Isaiah's records were meticulously forged to prevent any connection between them and his stolen mineral-rich land, fearing that any link back to Eleanor would expose his entire scheme. Solly approached Cassie, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "This means that you and Isaiah, you're not just childhood friends." Greg finished, looking between them. "You're full siblings, same mother." Cassie and Isaiah looked at each other, the truth reflected in their identical eyes, same shade, same shape, and a small, unique constellation of moles just below their right ear, a birthmark no one had ever linked. How had no one noticed before? "That's why the watch and the telescope meant so much to both of you," Eleanor murmured. "They were our family heirlooms. I gave the watch to Isaiah before Victor took him away, making him believe it was a gift from the mother he never knew. I gave the telescope to you, Cassie, through a kindly orphanage worker, a final whisper of me, hoping one day you'd find each other. I was forced to give you both up, not abandon you, to protect you from him after he seized our land and threatened my life." At that moment, a police siren sounded in the distance, rapidly approaching. "This ends now," announced Cassie, her voice finding new determination. "All the lies, all the manipulation." The following week, the newspapers exploded with headlines about the scandal. Victor Sterling, respected magnate, arrested for fraud, kidnapping, document forgery, and corporate malfeasance. The Sterling Empire, built on crime and the separation of families, collapsed as investigations revealed decades of corruption and the vast mineral fraud. Cassandra, discovering her true identity as Eleanor Dixon's daughter, renounced the Sterling name and took her real surname. The land was legally returned to the Dixon family, and the corporate project was transformed into the Eleanor Dixon Memorial Innovation Environmental Hub, a center for sustainable tech development and community support, particularly for abandoned youth and environmental protection. 6 months later, in the expanded and modernized Dixon Dynamics Tech and Auto Workshop, Isaiah adjusted a complex EV system while Cassie reviewed documents for the newly created Eleanor Dixon Foundation. "Is it still strange," he asked, wiping grease from his hands, "to find out that your whole life was built on a lie?" Cassie smiled, a genuine smile she had rarely shown in her previous life. Strange, yes, but also profoundly true and liberating. She touched the small wooden telescope she now wore as a pendant. "We lost 20 years, but we regained our truth, our family, and a purpose beyond anything we imagined." Eleanor entered the workshop carrying freshly brewed herbal tea. Her eyes, once marked by sadness, now shone with the peace of someone who had finally found justice and her children. "The watch, the telescope," she said, noticing Isaiah still wore his and Cassie hers. "They always kept us connected, even when we didn't know it." Sometimes the most elaborate lies are undone by the simplest of ties. A watch passed from mother to son, then to a daughter who didn't even know her brother existed, united by a birthmark and the stars. And sometimes empires built on injustice crumble, not under the weight of guilt, but under the unshakable force of truth that resurfaces when least expected.